My name's Natalie Pierce, and if you'd walked into that conference room at 9:45 a.m. sharp, you'd have thought I was the luckiest woman alive. Fresh pressed silk blouse, soft beige heels, the faint scent of white jasmine on my wrist. The kind of woman who'd made it. The quarterly review was halfway through when my boss, Ethan Brooks, cleared his throat. "Before we move on," he said, looking right at me, "Natalie, we've decided to terminate your position. Effective immediately." The words landed like glass shattering in a quiet room. For a second, I couldn't even hear the hum of the projector anymore. Just the sharp, mechanical click of the pen in my hand and the sudden stillness of 10 people avoiding eye contact. No warning. No discussion. Just done. I felt my pulse steady, strangely calm. I could almost hear my grandmother's voice. "When they try to silence you, baby, make them remember your silence." I slid my chair back, smooth and slow. My voice came out soft, almost kind. "Well," I said, standing up, straightening my blazer. "Thank you for the clarity." Then I smiled, that quiet, knowing kind of smile. "And Ethan, good luck for tomorrow's." His brows furrowed, confusion flickering across his face, but I didn't explain. I didn't have to. 2 years earlier, I wasn't standing in boardrooms. I was standing in the rain, holding a cardboard box with the last pieces of my desk life. A dead plant, a framed quote, and a half-used coffee mug that read, "Do what you love." Back then, I was an assistant marketing manager at another firm, under the same man, Ethan Brooks. He wasn't my boss yet, just a senior who liked to remind me where I belonged. I was the quiet one, the girl who stayed late, fixed slides, caught mistakes others made, and never complained when credit slipped past her. Until it didn't. I'd spent 3 sleepless weeks preparing a major campaign proposal, my first real shot. Ethan presented it to the board as his. I sat there, smiling through gritted teeth as applause filled the room. When I confronted him afterward, he just leaned back in his chair and said, "Welcome to the real world, Pierce. Learn to play smarter." That night, I called my grandmother, Helen Pierce. She didn't believe in pity, just purpose. Her voice was raspy, full of the kind of strength that comes from surviving decades of being underestimated. "Baby," she said, "never fight a snake in its hole. Let it crawl into the sunlight, and then walk right past it." She mailed me something a week later, an old silver compass, scratched and dented, but engraved with one word, forward. "Keep moving," the note read. "Doesn't matter where, just forward." A month later, I handed in my resignation. No backup plan, no safety net. Just that compass in my coat pocket and a fire in my chest. I remember my last day clearly. Ethan smirked when I told him I was leaving. "You'll be back," he said, eyes gleaming with arrogance. I smiled politely. Maybe, but not the same. When I walked out of that glass building, I was terrified, broke, uncertain, but free. I didn't know where I was going next. But for the first time, I was the one holding the map. I spent the next 6 months in a 1-bedroom apartment above a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon. The air always smelled like roasted beans and rain. Every night, I'd sit by the window with my laptop, staring at job boards and wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But failure has a strange rhythm. The more it hits you, the less it scares you. I started freelancing small marketing gigs for local bakeries, photographers, and startups no one had heard of. My clients couldn't pay much, but they trusted me. They saw what Ethan never did. I could build something from nothing. That's when I met Diane Walsh, a retired creative director who owned a small design studio across the street. She was everything I wanted to be, sharp, composed, unapologetically herself. She'd stop by my table each morning, comment on my spreadsheets, and eventually said, "You've got the bones of a brand strategist, not a freelancer. Build your own thing." Her belief in me was the push I didn't know I needed. Together, we turned my freelancing into a proper agency, Northlight Creative. I handled strategy and campaigns. Diane handled clients and mentorship. We worked out of her converted garage with flickering lights and coffee that always tasted slightly burnt. But the ideas? They were pure gold. Within a year, we landed a national skincare brand. My campaign, Real Skin, Real Story, went viral, pulling 6 million views in a week. My phone buzzed nonstop with new clients, investors, and offers. I remember sitting on the floor that night, still in my sweatpants, staring at the contract that would change my life. It felt unreal. But I didn't tell anyone. Not Ethan, not my old colleagues. On LinkedIn, I kept it vague. Doing some consulting work. Staying busy. Because part of me wanted to build in silence. Not out of fear, but purpose. I learned to manage teams, handle budgets, pitch to investors. I also learned that leadership wasn't about talking louder, it was about standing taller. By the second year, Northlight Creative wasn't just stable, it was thriving. We were shortlisted for Forbes' top 10 emerging agencies, and an acquisition offer sat on my desk. Still, I kept Helen's compass in my bag, rubbing my thumb over the word forward before every pitch, every meeting, every sleepless night. I'd become the woman I used to look up to, steady, self-made, and in control. And as fate would have it, one of our biggest corporate contracts came from a familiar name. Evermark Media Group. Ethan Brooks's company. He didn't know who owned Northlight yet, but he was about to. The morning of the meeting felt almost poetic. Same skyline, same coffee scent, same elevator music that used to fill me with dread. But this time, I wasn't walking into a job, I was walking into a deal. Evermark Media Group, Ethan's company, had been struggling for months. The rumor mill whispered about declining numbers, a lost investor, and one major partnership hanging by a thread. That partnership was with Northlight Creative. We had been their silent creative arm. All their viral campaigns over the last year were ours. The contract was deliberately confidential, signed under my COO's name. Ethan thought I was just Natalie, the external consultant. Until that meeting. He was standing at the head of the long glass table when I walked in, the same smirk, the same overconfident tone. "Glad you could join us, Natalie," he said. "We'll need those final campaign numbers before we decide whether to extend the partnership." I smiled. "Of course. But before that, there's something we need to discuss." He leaned back, folding his arms. "This should be quick then." I nodded to my assistant, who projected a presentation onto the wall. The title slide glowed in white and gold. Northlight Creative, a division of Pierce and Walsh Holdings. I watched his smirk dissolve. "That's you," he said, voice catching. "Yes," I said, my tone calm, almost gentle. "I'm the co-founder. Actually, as of yesterday, the majority shareholder." The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the projector, the faint buzz of someone's phone on the table. "I wanted to thank you," I continued. "You were my greatest teacher. You showed me exactly what kind of leader I'd never want to be." He blinked, trying to recover. "You're telling me we've been working for you?" "Not for me," I corrected softly. "With me. Though, after this morning, that may change." He looked pale. "What do you mean?" I gestured toward the stack of papers in front of him, the updated contract. "As of 10 a.m. tomorrow," I said, "Evermark's primary account moves under Northlight's direct management. Which means," I paused, smiling faintly, "your board will realize you've been outsourcing your success to the very woman you once fired." The blood drained from his face. One of the junior executives gasped quietly. "That's what I meant earlier," I added, gathering my folders. "When I said, 'Good luck for tomorrow's,' I was referring to your board meeting. You're going to need it." He opened his mouth, but no words came. I stood, adjusting my blazer, the same way I had 2 years ago, except this time, I wasn't walking out defeated. As I reached the door, I turned slightly. "Oh, and Ethan," I finally played smarter. The door closed behind me with a soft click, but to me, it sounded like thunder. Outside, the air felt lighter, sharper. I walked down the hallway toward the elevators, past the same receptionist who used to greet me every morning. She gave a tiny smile. She'd seen everything. When the elevator doors opened, I caught my reflection in the mirrored panel, poised, calm, unshaken. For a moment, I thought of my grandmother's compass resting in my bag. Forward. Always forward. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just moving forward anymore. I was leading. 2 weeks later, I got the email I'd been expecting. Subject line: Request for meeting, urgent. From Ethan Brooks. I almost deleted it, but then I remembered my grandmother's voice. Don't let them make you small, even when they're crawling back. So, I replied with one word. Sure. We met at a downtown cafe, neutral ground. He looked different now. The sharp confidence was gone, replaced by sleepless eyes and a loosened tie. He stood as I approached, forcing a smile. Natalie. Thanks for meeting me. I set my phone on the table and folded my hands. You said it was urgent? He nodded, exhaling. Evermark's board is considering a merger. We're bleeding clients. I'm asking if Northlight could help us stabilize. Maybe consult. Consult. I interrupted softly. You mean save? He flinched, then nodded. Yeah. Save. For a moment I studied him. The same man who once dismissed me now couldn't even hold my gaze. I'll help, I said finally, but on my terms. His head snapped up. Name them. I leaned forward slightly. First, every junior employee you underpaid and overworked, they get a raise and proper recognition. The interns who carried your campaigns? Full-time offers. He nodded quickly. Done. Second, I continued. You're stepping down as CEO. Effective immediately. You'll transition into a consulting role under Northlight's oversight. We'll handle creative, finance, and leadership training for your replacements. His jaw tightened. You're taking my company? No, I said calmly. I'm saving what's left of it and giving the people you ignored a real chance to lead. Silence stretched between us. Then, almost reluctantly, he nodded. And the third condition? I smiled faintly. You start learning again. Not from me, from the people you once talked over in meetings. He looked down, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. You've changed, he said quietly. I shook my head. No, Ethan. I just stopped shrinking. For a while, neither of us spoke. The rain outside blurred the city lights, soft and golden. Finally, he whispered. You know, I always knew you were good. I just never thought you'd be better. I finished for him, smiling. That's okay. Most people don't, until they have to look up. I stood, sliding my chair back. I'll have my legal team send over the documents. You can sign them tomorrow morning. He looked up. And after that? After that, I said, picking up my bag. You start your new job, reporting to Northlight Creative. His laugh was small, tired, almost disbelieving. You really mean it? I paused at the door. I really do. This isn't revenge, Ethan. It's balance. As I stepped outside, the cold air bit my cheeks. But inside, something felt steady, settled. Because real power, I'd learned, isn't about crushing anyone. It's about standing tall enough that no one can crush you again. The deal went through within a week. Evermark officially became a Northlight subsidiary, and Ethan kept his promise. He stepped down quietly. No drama, no headlines. Just a quiet end to an era that had once defined my pain. The funny thing about success is that it doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it hums softly in the background, steady and sure. A month later, I flew home to Vermont, the place I'd been avoiding since I left everything behind. The air smelled of pine and cinnamon. My grandmother's porch light still flickered like it always had, stubborn against the wind. She was sitting in her rocking chair, wrapped in a knitted blanket, her silver hair glowing in the porch light. Well, she said, smiling without looking up from her tea. I heard you made the news. I laughed, sitting beside her. You have your ways, huh? She chuckled softly. A woman always knows when her granddaughter finally learned to walk forward without looking back. I reached into my bag and pulled out the old silver compass. It had new scratches now, but the word forward still gleamed faintly. I kept it with me, I said, placing it in her hand. She turned it over, eyes misting. You didn't just move forward, baby. You took the world with you. For a long while, we just sat there in silence, the kind that speaks louder than words. Crickets hummed, a car passed distantly, and for the first time in years, I felt still. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and watched the sunrise spill across the horizon, soft pinks melting into gold. My phone buzzed with messages from employees, clients, and new partners. But I didn't open any of them. I just held that compass and smiled. Because the girl who once stood trembling in a conference room had learned something far greater than success. She'd learned peace. And as the sun rose higher, I whispered softly to the wind, half to myself, half to every woman who'd ever been silenced, doubted, or dismissed. They thought they ended my story that day, but all I did was turn the page and write theirs out of it.